This is the Psychedelic Coach Podcast. My name is Cole.
My name is Tah.
Y'all, we're going to talk today about what to do when a client has a hard time after a psychedelic experience. It's so much to unpack here. We're going to do the best that we can to really hone this in. Tah, kick us off. What are some ways that a client could end up having a hard time?
Yeah, there's quite a few ways that a person can end up having a hard time with psychedelic experiences. One of the top ways that I've found that when our experiences with people is when people go into a very high dose space, their nervous system can get overwhelmed. The amount of information that comes into them can be overwhelming. That can lead to a lot of intense feelings, a lot of intense emotions, and difficulty actually navigating this and bringing it into integration with the family, bringing it into integration with loved ones, with partners, with husbands, wives, domestic partners, with business partners, with people in general. It can be a very challenging space. Another thing that we found has been challenging for folks is when the set and setting aren't observed. And the set would be traditionally in psychedelic spaces, people will consider that the mindset. From the way we work, we look into the mindset, the body set, a person's construct set, and how the things that they participate in, their social set and their emotional set. All of those are part of the set with us. And the setting is the actual physical place that an experience takes place. And so if the setting isn't a place that is safe, that is feeling connected, that there are things that disturb the person that's in it, that can make for a very challenging experience. And that moves them into a place of having challenges after the experience. Another thing would be past traumas. People have past traumas and dramas that contribute to them having a challenging time. They haven't been navigating these things before the psychedelic experience. And then when they have a psychedelic experience, the traumas come up to be addressed. And when they come up to be addressed and they don't have a support system around that, or they don't have tools, that can be a very challenging space, because there are many people that have traumatic circumstances that get buried. People have things that happen from their childhood, sexual experiences, abuse situations, things being taken from them, abandonment, rejection, betrayal circumstances that haven't been navigated. And these old traumas will come up to the surface and become an issue. And so in that space, the next space that I would talk about is people don't have support. You don't have support. If you don't have support after your psychedelic experience, how are you going to lean into integrating this stuff? It's just another thing that came up for me to explore, to brush under the rug, to put under the quilt, to put in the closet, and it's just another skeleton that you put in the shadow. And so if people don't have a substantial support system moving forward, how are they going to navigate these things moving forward in their lives? If they don't have a therapist, if they don't have an integration coach, if they don't have a friend, if their partnership or their family at home isn't in a space to be able to support them and understand what they've gone through, then how are they going to move forward? And I find that's been an issue. And so all of that stuff, the support system is part of your integration process. And if people don't have a solid integration process, that can be a part of the issue. And this is why we talk about in the Condor approach, the psychedelic experience is not the star of the show. The person experiencing the psychedelics is the star of the show, and psychedelics is part of their process of integrating information. That's the integration before the information before the experience, way before the experience, the integration of the information from a person's intention, the integration from the experience of psychedelics itself, and then the integration of all of that stuff together, moving it to blend it in with a person's day-to-day life. So those are the things that I would find are challenging, that can contribute to people having a hard time after the psychedelic experiences. And this is a very shortened version of this. We can go on for hours about what kind of challenges there can be.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key thing is each one of those we could unpack into 1 hour without taking a breath. I mean, even when you go back to what you first said about dosages, right? Because dose is bio-individual independent. What might create overwhelm or too much for one person might be 1 gram of mushrooms, for another person might be 30 grams of mushrooms. This is why the intake process is so important, is you want to have more understanding of a person's history, what their body's been through, and to have an honest conversation, because even if someone is going into an experience consensually, overwhelm can happen. So what would you say if, let's say someone Because where I'm coming from this is if you look at Laba Kalindi, people that are under more of the high dose mushroom umbrella, they're not even working with mushrooms in their model until 7 grams. Up until then, it's like cute, superficial, more surface level things. And 7 grams to most people, at least the ones that I'm familiar with, put 7 grams in the hero's dose category, which is like the max that most people ever experience in mushrooms, I would say, in a general populace or overall in the psychedelic space of people that are exploring psilocybin. So, what do you think could be some signs of too much because you have a nurse background, because you're so great at tracking people's nervous systems? What might be a sign for a coach, either before or after the experience, that the potential of overwhelm is there for a client?
Yeah, before the experience, if so, overwhelm is an emotional space, and this is something that we've been talking about recently. Overwhelm is an emotion. It's an emotion from having so many things on the plate that the nervous system, that your mind, that your whole organism has challenges navigating all of these things at once. And there's a surplus, right? There's an excess of things for you to be able to handle in the immediate moment. And so overwhelm happens. So if a person comes to me and they want to sit for a situation, for a coaching situation, or for a psychedelic experience, if I'm asking them these questions: what's going on in your life? Who's in your life? Who are your favorite people? Who are your least favorite people? Where's the drama? Where's the trauma? And I see that they are doubled over in overwhelm. Chances are that they may have overwhelm in the experience. Not necessarily. Sometimes people learn to simplify in the experience, but there's a potential for that overwhelm. A person is overwhelmed before they come to the experience. There is a potential for them to be overwhelmed during the experience. And
So, something I was going to say, because in one ceremony that I was facilitating, the person was already in overwhelm. And after the experience was out of the overwhelm because they were able to connect back to their heart, their sense of safety within themselves. And I think the important thing to discuss here is there's the potential of either. So even if you think going into an MDMA space, of course, assuming under legal jurisdiction and guidance, that getting them back in their heart will quote unquote fix it, you're already outcome driven versus meeting someone where they are and having a very honest conversation of the two potentials. Yes, we might get you into a more relaxed parasympathetic state, and we might also send you into that brick wall you're destined for faster. And this is where I think having those really honest conversations at the end of the day, if someone is an adult person who is mentally capable of making the decision, not someone in total distress, duress, but someone who can logically talk through the potentials, then it is understanding that this isn't a silver bullet, one size fits all approach, no matter what substance, and how often we see people go into these substances hoping for the quick fix.
true indeed. The quick fix is not, it's not my ball game. I'm a long game person. I'm way down the road, let's be in the process type of person. But this is the thing, as a facilitator, as a integration coach, as whatever type of practitioner you are, to be aware of the potential of overwhelm affecting you on the front end, the middle part, and the tail end is really important. So if a person comes with overwhelm, they can have many different potentials. Now, if a person is overwhelmed, if they don't, now you were asking about after the experience, if a person doesn't have resources and they come back with a lot of information from their psychedelic experience, and we see this a lot because they talk about it in scientific ways that the default mode network of the brain gets disengaged while you're in a psychedelic experience. So you can actually perceive things differently than you have been. When you're able to perceive things differently than you have been, a lot more information comes in around the things that you already believed that you knew. And so now you're knowing new stuff. And now that new stuff, how do you apply this to all of the aspects of you outside of the psychedelic experience? How do you apply this to your family? How do you apply this to each person in your family? How do you apply this to how your family relates to your work? How do you apply this to how your family relates to your work, relates to your money? Like all of these different aspects can start to stack up and they can be a little challenging to navigate if you don't have support. If you do have support, I mean, people get through what they get through. And I'm talking about being efficient and effective in creating habits around new spaces. And we hear arguments all the time. This is not what indigenous people do with psychedelics, and this is not what ancient traditions did with psychedelics. And I'm like, yeah, we're in modern times and we have technology and we have 88 tabs open on the phone, on our laptops, and 68 apps open on our phones. There's a lot of stuff happening at the same time. So to be able to have the leg up in the technology of integration, I believe is tremendously important.
It is, and it's the opportunity also. And when I even reflect back on, say, with the Huni Kuin and working with them, there are aspects of their indigenous culture they're not interested in participating anymore. They want to move forward. They want some of the modern conveniences. And this is a whole other episode, so I won't really get into it, but merely to touch on the fact that a lot of what Western traditions are calling ancient are not ancient. They are evolved of ancient traditions, but even down in the jungle, a lot of the women that I'm speaking to are expressing that they are being repressed and oppressed by the men in the villages and in the tribal communities to not practice magic, ayahuasca, and those types of spiritual curanderismo that they're saying is reserved for men, but that is a new, in the last 100 years, evolution. And so all of this to say, be mindful as a coach or facilitator, touting something as being ancient or this is the way. If you are not from that tribe, you're already breaking tradition. Whether or not you were blessed into it, it's still not traditional for someone outside of the community. And so bringing it to, say someone's a coach and they had someone come back from an experience feeling a bit of overwhelm, and maybe it's not even the emotion of overwhelm, a nervous system overdrive where there was a lot of music, a lot of people in a totally different environment. Maybe they were in the jungle, all the bugs, the snakes, like their nervous system is feeling overwhelmed. What are some of the ways a coach could establish a safe and supportive space?
After or during?
After.
So a coach can only provide. So this is what I like to start safety conversations off with is I can only keep you as safe as you know how to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you don't know how to be safe, there's nothing I can do to keep you safe. So in your perception, I may be able to block animals from coming to get you or people from hitting you or harming you or taking your stuff. But if you don't know how to feel safe inside, that is the priority number one. And so the thing a coach could do is teach the client what safety is, right? And get their idea of what safety is. So when I talk about safety, for me is freedom from hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. I'm going to say that again. Safety is freedom from hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, and pain. That's what safety is. And so I can tell a person, no, nobody's coming to get you, and they'll still be looking over their shoulder. How many times have we worked with vets that have been in wars that are constantly looking at the door? They have to have their back against the wall and their face to the door in order to perceive any semblance of safety in the moment. And I can only keep a person as safe as they can be. And so what you can do as a coach is talk to a person about the environment. How's your environment for you? How do you feel safe? And get a person's information. And so once the coach has a person's information on what safety is for them, is the environment for you feeling safe? Do the people around you feel safe? Are there any types of people that you don't want to be around? Is there any type of environment that you don't want to be in? Let's see if we can craft this for you, if we can craft this together, right? And let's talk about what the potential that your body's looking for, that your organism is looking for, the potential of injury, loss, hurt, harm, deficit, right? Pain. What are the potentials? And let's discuss them. So when we put these things on the table, we move them out of the shadow into the light. When we move them out of the shadow into the light, a person can actually do something about it. But as long as a person's space of unsafe is in the shadow, there's nothing we can do. And so talking about this, bringing this to the surface and having this conversation would be step one. What is safety to you? And an expression of my every intention is for this to be a safe environment. Okay, I'm doing my best to craft a safe environment, but in order to craft a safe environment with you, I need to know what safety is to you, because otherwise I'm giving you my rendition of what safety is. And if I give you my rendition of safety and it doesn't agree with yours, I can have pillows and fluffy stuff and I can have security guards and all of this stuff. But if somebody's looking at you a certain way and that causes you to feel unsafe, then all of this environment that I've created is. And so this is where me knowing as a practitioner, me knowing what your safety looks like is priority number one. And so that discussion has to be had. What is safety to you? What is safety to you? Because this is what safety is to me. Let's get on the same page and let's craft an environment where you can perceive safety, because this is your safety. So you're going to have to create it.
Yeah. One of the most impactful things I heard at the Condor Approach, the last one in Austin that we had in February, was how many people did not know they didn't feel safe. And then coming to the Condor Approach, they felt safe there and were able to delineate the difference between feeling safe and not feeling safe in the moment of now. Like what it is, safety versus security. Security being the future idea of safety. And then us saying, do you feel safe in the moment of now? But if you've been in fight or flight and felt unsafe your whole life, you have nowhere to even work from with that information. Like, what is it to even be safe? And it's something that is what I want to keep at the forefront of the Condor Approach is, if nothing else, Tah, people coming to the event get to experience what it's like to feel safe as a Black body with other white folks and white bodies with other Black folks, and in places where, one, they know intellectually that they're safe, right? Like they can see and feel, they've got support there. We have master coaches there to be able to see from day one versus day 3, the difference in the nervous systems, people's comfort level around each other, and how they're able to converse and connect and talk. For me, because we've really guided from this place of doing what we can do to create safety, which is also creating boundaries in terms of engagement, that we're always evolving. Because the other kind of dysfunctional thing that I see in the psychedelic space is some of the churches are talking about, we want everyone to govern themselves. The problem with that is it's actually not consensual, because everyone's individual guideline will vary. And until we get to a mutual context of how we're going to operate, and each person who chooses to be there they're opting in and consenting to what it is to be a sovereign being who is self-governing themselves in this way. And that is part of what I think it just doesn't work. I would love to not have any rules and all of that, but the problem is people are coming from different cultural backgrounds, needs, and what they need for safety. That's not really a possible thing, which is why when it comes to integrating experiences, having a coach to help have a plan is a mutual consent from a coach and a client perspective also.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something that was a deal breaker after this time for me is I had taken a client that I didn't have the space on the other side of the session, and that was communicated, and I knew that, but I allowed their desperation to push me outside of that rule for myself of needing to really be there and have a plan and only work with someone that was interested in collaborating in that plan. And it turned out how it turned out, as far as then after the experience, they wanted nothing to do with me, felt that I was the devil incarnate and all of that. And it just doubled down in my mind the importance of developing a plan for integration. And if you're going to open somebody up, whether or not they want the after plan, I decided that was a deal breaker for me, that I would not again work with someone that wasn't in for the whole process, because big stuff can come up in ceremony and it's only the beginning. And so integrating those things, it's like you've got to have the sign off and the consent from the beginning. And if someone's not willing to consent to the entire container of support, then it's a no.
Yeah, that's got to be a no. And this is a thing. It has to be safe for the client and safe for the coach or the practitioner,
Yes.
or the shaman or the facilitator. Safety is it's a two-way street. It's not a one-way dynamic where I provide you with safety and I don't matter. No, I do. I totally matter. And so and this is another thing for coaches is don't bypass your safety for somebody else's. Don't do that. I don't like telling people what to do. Don't do that.
Do not
Okay,
recommend.
do not recommend. And if you want to dive into safety, and we talk about safety in episode 198 of the Psychedelic Coach Podcast, where I talk about the biggest realization that we had, that we noticed at the Condor approach in February in Austin about safety, and I talk about it, and it's a pretty huge realization around safety. Most people don't know that they are not in a safe space, and when you ask them, are you in a position where you perceive that you're free from hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain? And most of the time they'll be like, there's stuff there that I just don't feel like I'm free from it. So there's an aspect that's not safe. And is it an aspect in your body? Is it an aspect in your microbiome? Is it an aspect in your emotional spaces, in your intuitive spaces? Is it in your constructs? Is it in your relationships? Is it in your ethnicity, your gender? Is there a space there that doesn't feel safe? Is there a space in your mind, in your idea spaces that doesn't perceive safety? And this is something that people are just bypassing. And this is why we talk about constructs so much in the work that we do, is because people's constructs are not safe. If I tell you that your religion is stupid, your religion is now not safe in your body, right? And so the only way for you to defend that, or for you to be in a space of upholding that, is through your organism, your body. And so this is why people don't feel safe, and they feel safe and unsafe in so many ways. And so this is the primary conversation, y'all. When you're in the coaching space, do you feel safe? Do you know what safety is? What is safety to you? Can I share what my idea of safety is? And once we get that on the same page, then we can create a container together. We're both safe, where everyone is safe in the space. And we talk about all the weird stuff. We talk about farting, and we talk about noise making, and we talk about sexual energy, and we talk about all the things that people would say are taboo. Because the taboo stuff gonna come up in psychedelic is gonna come up in psychedelic experiences, because this is the shadow play stuff. Shadow stuff is the stuff that's not being illuminated. And when we illuminate it, it comes to the surface to be addressed. And if that stuff that's being illuminated is scary, it's like the monster in the closet. The boogeyman is gonna come out the closet and is gonna scare your ass.
Yeah, and that's where, from a coaching perspective, and this is the difference between a coach and like a therapist. Therapists are usually working with the past. Coaches are coming up with the plan for the future. Where do you want to go? What's the play? A coach has had their own experience or guided other people through experiences. What's the play? You had this psychedelic experience or big realization. Now what? What resources and support can you, the coach, offer? And honestly, it's why I'm such a proponent of the Condor Approach method, the book, which will be on Amazon. You can pre-buy now, but you'll be able to, it ships on May 18th. If every coach just used the book with clients and then gave feedback and support, you're encouraging self-reflection, which is key. You're promoting self-care, but you're doing it through radical self-honesty and responsibility of the individual. Because so many people go to, whether it's power plants or mushrooms or other psychedelics, because they're giving their power away. They want the thing to fix them, or they want the coach, the facilitator, the shaman to fix them, but without encouraging self-reflection and self-care through radical self-responsibility and action, you're not going to get the results that you could get, and not from a outcome-based results, but from a functional. And are you going to keep journeying every month and not have that conversation you're supposed to have with your boss or your child or your mother or whoever, and you keep running back to source to feel good just long enough to bypass or buffer or skip the true things that are messing with you? What you say, wee, right? What's funky with you? What's fun with you? What is going on? Because until then, you're probably not going to get the same results. And this is something top people ask us, how did we get here? And I would say I'm more shocked how often people think that the way that we are is just the way that we've always been. Like we just emerged from the womb this way.
By osmosis. This is
Right.
diffusion. We just were born this way.
Or I just took enough mushrooms that this is like the genetic predisposition or post disposition, whatever that word would be. We have intentionally, since the day we got together, made decisions together and said, all right, so what do we need to know, do, be, or understand to make that happen or not do that? And at the beginning, it was like, I don't want to do that. How do we not do that we've done in past relationships, our first marriages, our past edicts of ourselves. And most people won't lean into that in new relationships. They're afraid of putting someone off. And I remember saying to you, look, can we not do the game thing where if you want to text me or call me, you just do? And if I want to text you or call you, I just do. And if you don't want to, you just tell me. Or if you're not available, you just tell me. And you're like, yes. And that's where our relationship started. I already knew I wasn't going to settle. And yet I would still date people and enjoy my life, but I was not going to have this idea of my person or attaching to a concept. So I just said, well, I'm going to be so honest with this dude. He either leans in or runs in complete horror, terror, and fear. And here we are 11 years later, or whatever it is now.
In complete horror to no.
Daily.
Daily. Listen, we moved through our stuff, and when we first got together, there was a lot of stuff from the past that we hadn't integrated. So we had to integrate our stuff and our experience and talk about it and be open about it and create safe containers for our individual selves and for us as a collective of two people plus Henry and now Cupcake, right? For us all to be together in a space where we can be in flow. This is a crafting space and we are consistently integrating. Integration does not end, y'all. Integration is not optional. It's always happening. How you integrate is the option. And that's what we provide at the Condor Approach, is an option for you to be able to actually integrate the way you choose to, not the way it's been chosen for you. And this is the difference between sovereignty and slavery, y'all.
Yeah.
This is the difference between sovereignty and slavery. You can be a slave to your old stuff. You can be a slave to society. You can be a slave to your parents. You can be a slave to your fears around what people will think about you. You can be a slave to all kinds of stuff. And you can be sovereign. It doesn't stop you from living in a society. It doesn't stop you from being a part of society. And how society has an influence over you is your choice when you are aware that you have a choice. And you've got to integrate the idea that you do have a choice. Okay, when you do have a choice, you can influence things differently. For me, control is an idea. It's a nice idea. It's a nice concept. It's a nice belief structure. I don't believe we have control. I believe influence is a potential.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Well, I think that we pretty much covered it. When it comes down to what makes integrating an experience challenging, difficult, y'all tell us, right? You're the ones listening right now. If there's things you want to hear more about or certain perspectives, hit us up on Instagram at the Condor Approach. We are taking a much bigger step forward in not only sharing the concepts, but sharing how we have gotten to where we are in our life. Why? Because we've got this beautiful relationship where we're dear friends and business partners, where I had heard Alex Hermosi talk about him and Layla, his wife. They're entrepreneurs together. And he said, listen, the average couple spends 20 minutes per day together conversing because they have jobs, kids, all that stuff. And I'm like, if we've been together for 10 years, and really since we got together, we were talking every day incessantly, then it's like we've already been together for 40 years, because there have been times where, aside from like a shit in a shower, we are together in business, in life, in projects, in travel, by choice. And there has never been obligation in this relationship. And
Nope.
if there was expectations we were unaware of, we name it, we talk about it, and take the next steps from there. It's not about being free from expectation, it's awareness of them. And what do we want to do with that awareness and that information? And we're going to start sharing a lot more how we've crafted and created a life the way that it is, because for some reason people think we're this magical unicorn relationship, like we're so lucky. If I had $1 for every time someone said you're so lucky, and I'm like, yes, and I stopped settling for relationships that was a placeholder, which made me available to Tah, and I stopped allowing myself to participate in things I didn't want to, and to communicate authentically and honestly. So we're going to burst your bubble, y'all. Not to say that we're not exquisite individuals, because I believe that we are, but this is by choice, not by chance.
Yeah. And just to bring it into your attention space, right? There's 168 hours a week, right? And when you multiply that by 52 weeks in a year, that's 8,736 hours a year. And the amount of time that we've spent together, I'd say 20 in the past 10 years, at least 20 hours a day together, we've got our professional
Expert.
We've got that 10,000 hours knocked
Twice.
out, more than twice. That's 8,000 a year. And so let's knock off 2,000, say it's 6,000 a year for 10 years. 60,000 hours we've spent together.
We are
masters of us, man. And we still don't know, right? There's still lots of stuff that we don't know. And so let's lean into it, y'all. Let's get integrated.
So until next time, y'all, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe. If you loved this episode, all we ask is that you share it with someone. This is how we start to destigmatize a lot of these experiences, is by normalizing the conversation. Stop hiding from your family and friends around what you're participating in, and start working on the skill of communication, how you can relate it. Send them a podcast episode and say, what do you think? Send them How to Change Your Mind on Netflix and say, what do you think? If we don't start getting more public conversations, things are not going to change. And I have been to enough bodunk towns in the United States at this point where people think it's not happening. And guess what, folks? It's happening. People just aren't talking about it. So rate, review, subscribe, share with a friend. We'll be back on the next episode. Tah Whitty, I love you.
I love you so much, girl.
I adore you. You're awesome and brilliant and smart and so sexy and hot. And you keep getting hotter, by the way. This 50-second rotation that you're on currently, exquisite. Biceps are bulging in the video. I'm here for this life. Again, not by chance, people, by choice.
By choice.
Choices. Yes. Integration is not optional, but how you integrate is. Until next time, be free.
Place then. If you're called, get involved. But first, get informed. Let's talk the 4 N's: intake, intention, in-space integration, leading to deeper transformations. Psychedelic Coach Podcast, Tah and Kole. Walk you through the process, it's all possible. Leave space for the follow-through. Most importantly, integration is not optional.